And they're underway as they're coming down into turn number one. Green flag is in the air. You saw there, Christian Arana getting a good start from the first position with Ian Bevan in the second spot. Close behind to come through turn number one for the first time. And they're making their way now down into turn number two here in Mosport. 30 laps of this race. Apologies for getting on air a little bit late today. It's always difficult for this series. However, you see that Bevan is right behind Aranha as they come down now into turn number three. Aranha was talking earlier on how he had issues in the race earlier on today, which forced him to retire from the race after a huge crash. And he is now trying to make up ground from that. A little bit back further through the field. Emmanuel Palumbo just getting a little bit sideways there as they now come down into that double apex right-hander, the slowest corner on the racetrack. You see the field benching up there, and I believe that was Bevan in the number two car going sideways. A huge crash there as they're coming onto the back straightaway. You've got Marco Corti involved as well. At least three drivers just stationary on the racetrack trying to get their cars turned around. You've got Connor Clifford as well. Richard Weedstead very slow on the racetrack, but Ian Bevan started that pile-up all the way back as he just came down. It looks as though he just got himself a little bit too much off the grass to just turn him around. We'll get a replay of that momentarily. But as that happened, cars saw the smoke started to slow down, and what that meant is that you had another two drivers involved, and I believe you have a couple of other drivers with damage. So the number 8 machine there of Ian Bevan is out, circling on the racetrack, sorry. He has got a little bit of damage to his car. In fact, he almost lost it again as he came into the final corner. He will be moved down pretty much all the way to the rear of this field. In fact, as they come past the start-finish line after starting in second, he is all the way down into the 21st position. We've had already another incident on track as well. So action all the way through the field momentarily. Janny Zalowski has moved himself up into the second position. But Christian Aranha is your race leader with Emmanuel Palumbo in third. Fernando Sexis in the fourth position. And then Kirk Crum rounding out your top five. And I tell you what, Aranha has already pulled himself out a 1.1 second gap. He will be relieved that Bevan had issues early on in this race, because what it meant is he could pull out the gap early on. You saw Bevan was very close as they came into turns number 5 and 6 at the start of this race, until Bevan had that moment which spun him around and caused that huge multi-car pile-up on the slowest car of the racetrack. And you've got a couple of drivers sat down on pit road. You've got a couple of drivers already out of the race. Marco Corti is already out of the race, as is Stefan Frenzel as well. And having a look back for the field, there is a great battle going on for what is 9th, 10th and 11th on the racetrack momentarily. You've got Simon Dejeune, and Sean Woodhouse and Nachum Limorte all battling for 10th, 11th and 12th on the racetrack, separated by less than a second and a half as they come back down into turn number 2. You've also got that front pack as well, very closely separated, all the way back from Emmanuel Palumbo, all the way back through until Mario Manconi, who in fact is making a move down the inside, and naturally Morte. That was the battle for the 12th position. He managed to get past there. So this field is very strongly tight together at the moment. You got Kurt Crum going very wide there in turn number 6. And you also had the number 14 machine of Sean Woodhouse. He lost the car at the start of this lap as well, and that was down into turn number 2. One of the most difficult corners on the racetrack is the grip just falls away, and in these cars where you have to take the apex with so much speed, if you just get a little bit offline, you are going either straight into the tyre barriers or on the long walk around the grass that lines the outside of this racetrack. So you see there, Eugenio Massa, he is very slow. He has got himself some damage in the number 17 machine. And I believe he got himself a little bit of rear end damage down in turn number 2. It looks like he just yet got T-boned there by Ian Biven, in his second incident of the day, Biven's got himself some more damage to his front wing, so he's struggling but still trying to gain up some positions. Biven, after starting this race in the second position, is currently fighting for what is essentially 17th position on the racetrack. And he's having a disastrous day at the moment. It'll be fun to see him try and come back through the field for a second time, but after Lance Corley ahead of him, he's got himself a 4-second gap to the next driver, which is Richard Wiested in the 16th position. And in fact, I just said that, Redo Rahamandri, he's gone off on the racetrack, as has Shane Dunn, with a huge amount of damage to that rear wing. Shane Dunn losing it into turn number 2, trying to just get the car straightened out as Rahamandri just speared off onto the wall on the right-hand side of the apex into turn number 2. Shane Dunn, he tried to correct his car, and as he did so in that number 23 machine, he just lost it onto that grass, and he had just whacked the tyre barrier, and his suspension is all out of tow, trying to get himself back down to pit road. Rahamandri's engine's looks like it's about to blow up any moment now. It's making some very horrible sounds as he's coming through turns number 5 and 6 at the moment. They're having a drag race at 40 miles an hour down the back straightaway. This is something that the guys behind him will not be happy to see, but thankfully Ranha is the closest car by, and he's pretty much halfway around the racetrack, so he shouldn't catch these two drivers unless they start going even slower. Ranha, however, is your race leader. The gap between himself and Jan Niezolowski in the second position is less than 1 second. The gap as they came across the line last time by was pretty much 9/10 of a second. Niezolowski's last lap time was 1 minute 33.214. In comparison, Christian Arana's was a 1 minute 33.300. So Niezolowski just eking ever so slightly into that lead of Christian Arana there. But as they get underneath that second window, what happens is you start getting the dirty air on the very small narrow wings of these race cars, and it really does upset the handling of the car. So you have to be so careful, not only when you stuck behind trying to gain a bit of time, but also when you go to make that move, because as soon as the air comes away, you often see that these cars get a huge amount of oversteers. They have to readapt their driving styles. So we are racing for 30 laps here today. This is the Skip Barber Racing School Premier Series on Glacier TV. Apologies for the technical difficulties at the start of this broadcast. To run through your top 5, we've got Christian Aranha in the number 1 car, your race leader, with Jan Niezolowski in the second position, and Mano Palumbo in third, Fernando Seixas in fourth, and Kurt Crum rounding out your top 5. And we are racing for 30 laps here today. These cars have already put 5 laps in the books, so 25 laps left to go here. Fastest lap of the race currently is, I believe, in the hands of Niezolowski, who did a 1 minute 33.007. So it looks like Niezolowski is on the charge at the moment. It does look as though he's closing that gap even more. It's down to just over 0.8 of a second as they came across the line that last time by. It looks like Niezolowski is very good in the last part of this lap, whereas Arana just a little bit stronger in those first couple of corners. As they come now down once again the slowest portion of the racetrack, then they'll build up a huge amount of speed down this long back straightaway leading into the final couple of corners, and it's so difficult, this racetrack, with those fast sweeping corners, just for the simple fact that the cars don't have that much downforce, and when you add on to the fact that they've got to deal with a huge amount of fast speed left and right hand corners, it really does put a lot of pressure on these drivers. But Niezolowski really is closing as they come down through turns number 9 and 10 once again. So you put the 6th lap in the book here, and as they come past the start finish line, that gap is closed a little bit more, and it is now down to 0.7 of a second. So Niezolowski is really eking out, closing that gap down 0.1 of a second a lap over the last couple of laps, and he's doing a great job. A little bit further back, Stuart Adcock, Vasali and Ribdrev are having a great battle for the 7th position on track. Adcock is just keeping that momentum in the 7th position. He has got Vasily right behind him, less than a second behind in the 8th position. And then you've got yourself a little bit of a drop back then for the midfield battle, which currently is between Simon van der Joon in the number 16 machine, sat in 9th. Mauricio Michoni in the 10th position in the number 24 car. Then Nacho Limonte in the number 13 car is sat in the 11th position. In fact, that last lap he dropped back about half a second from those two drivers. So he will be starting to slowly fall into clutches of the likes of David Farr and Johan Benzinger, who are currently battling for the 12th and the 13th position. Christian Aranha, he is now coming back down into turn number 8, 9 and 10 once again. And as he comes past the start finish line, what we're going to do, we're going to go on board with Aranha for the next lap. In that number 1 car, Aranha is such a master of this car, the Skip Barbers, and as he comes past the start finish line, we'll go on board with him now. Coming down into turn number 1. This is a fast, sweeping right-hand turn. Got to get on the power early to get yourself a good drive coming out as you then go down that short straightaway down into turn number 2, the Clayton corner, one of the most difficult corners on the racetrack. You've got to get yourself a nice apex in. Make sure you don't go too wide and get onto the grass. Then hug the curve on exit. Aranha didn't need to use too much with there. And then into Quebec corner, turn number 3. A fast right-hand sweep once again. You need to settle the car down. It starts to go, as you go underneath the bridge, the track just falls away as you go down into turn number 4, and then turn number 5 and 6. Moss corner, very, very slow. You slow it all the way down here to less than 60 miles an hour through the first part of the apex, down to less than 50 miles an hour on the second part. Then hug the curve nicely on the outside. You come down this long back straightaway, the Mario Andretti straightaway, which leads all the way down to turn number 8, the longest straightaway on the racetrack. And then as we'll come down now, you see he's got himself a bit of lap traffic ahead of him. That shouldn't affect him through this section of the race course. He'll now flick it to the right for turn number 8. Very fast entry speed here. And then you've got to settle the car down nicely and move it to the left-hand side for turn number 9. And then slow it down, really slow it down into turn number 10. White corner, breaking it all the way down to 70 miles an hour on the corner apex. You see there Arana going around the outside of Andrino Massa to put him 1 lap down. And that is a lap of Mosport. And we'll have a look back through a bit more of the field. Kurt Crum really is closing on this 2-car battle between Fernando Siexes and Armando Palumbo. This is a battle for 3rd, 4th and 5th on the racetrack. And these 4 drivers, if you go back to Manuel Hernandez, are separated by less than 2 seconds on the racetrack. So as is often the case here in the Skip Barber Racing School Premier Series, you see the midfield having some very, very close battles. Mosport, however, is one of those tracks where it can be difficult to overtake because you are pretty much single file for the most part of the racetrack. These fast corners, you can lose a lot of time, but the cars behind you find it very difficult to overtake until you come down into turns number 5 and 6, which you see those cars going through now, and then perhaps your second best opportunity to overtake will be then coming down into turn number 8. Into the first part of the S's, where if you can get a good drive, you can go side by side into turn 8 and see how you go on from there. And Kurt Crum has closed that gap to less than half a second. CX is ahead of him. You see CX is having a look down to the inside of Palumbo as they came through turn number 9. He's looking very close, very racy as they come down into 10. It's very difficult to make a move down into turn number 1 down the start finish line unless you've got a good drive out of that final corner, which that last time by CX didn't quite have, but he can try and gain that time all the way through turn number 1. You see he's taking a bit of a wider apex, but what he's done is he's got a little bit loose, and that has allowed Kurt Crum to have a look down to the inside, and he takes the position away. And Eugenio Mata, he is now going to be coming right into the middle of this battle as he's being put a lap down by these drivers. You see Palumbo there. He's going to have to pick a line nicely out the corner as he does so. You see Massa just moving all the way to the right-hand side, letting all of these drivers go past him. In fact, Manuel Menendez getting past as well just before Massa turns into the fourth corner on the racetrack. But that didn't seem to harm anyone at all. Kurt Krum, however, he's looking like he can now try and take away the third position from Palumbo if he can get a good run through the next couple of laps, as we already have 10 in the books. In fact, Aranha is about to come and start his 11th lap. Simon Lejeune and Nacho Lemonte, they are having an interesting battle on the racetrack. Lemonte's last couple of lap times have been pretty much in that region of 1 minute 34.2 to 1 minute 34.4. In comparison, Simon Lejeune's last lap time was a 1 minute 34.751. The lap previous, he lost an entire second on that as well. So Lejeune is losing ground here rapidly, and that is allowing the number 13 machine of Nacho Lemonte to close right up to the rear of Lejeune as they come down to put their 10th lap in the book, coming down to turn number 1 now. And the gap between those two drivers is now down to less than half of a second. Just a bit of a head up as well, you still have a couple of drivers sat down in pit lane getting some repairs to their race car. You've got Joan Benzinger sat on pit lane, as is Radu Rahmadri. Shane Dodd is sat in pit lane. The three drivers there trying to get some repairs to his race car. In fact, Rahmadri is just about to come out of pit lane now. It'll be interesting to see how much speed he can keep on that car. As he's just getting some fresh tyres. That is a very good idea for him, as he had a huge impact on that number 21 machine. You see there, just replacing the front and then the rears of those tyres. And now he is away out onto track. We have to keep an eye on him just to see whether he has any speed or whether or not he will be deemed as being too dangerously slow by the other drivers. He's accelerating out of pit lane now, so we will keep an eye on him. He's currently scored 5 laps down in the number 21 car, but does look as though he's coming down into turn number 2. He has got himself a little bit of speed. In fact, this is going to be one of the key points. He's going very slowly through the apex, however. He got himself some snap understeer. Ahead of him, Adcock, CXs and Krum still having that battle on the racetrack with Palumbo. And I think, actually, Mendez just lost himself a little bit of time that previous lap, as yeah, Stuart Adcock is involved in that battle as well, and Stuart Adcock has moved himself up into the 6th position in that number 3 machine. So Adcock is charging hard, and he is, however, about 3 seconds behind that battle for the 3rd position, which is still Palumbo, Krum and CXS. But Adcock's last lap time, 1 minute 33.308, his second fastest lap of the race. When you compare that to the drivers ahead of him, he is pretty much about anywhere between half a second to a second faster as those drivers are battling for position on the racetrack. And in fact, there you see CX2 trying to get the slipstream down the back straightaway as they come down into turn number 8. You see also Kurt Krum, he's holding the outside and the inside line, but CX is looking to the outside. The next corner is a right-hander that will put him offline coming in. You see he just backs at the throttle just a little bit there. That allows Kurt Krum to in turn put a bit of pressure on to Palumbo as they come through turns number 9 and now into 10. Will Krum have a look down the inside? He could have made the move but thought better of it, but he gets a good run down the front straightaway as we see a car there who sat on the side of the racetrack. I believe that was Marjorie, after coming back out on to the track, decided that the car is simply undrivable and he is done for the day. So to run through your top 10 then, Christian Haranha is your race leader in the number 1 machine. Jan Nisolowski has managed to close that gap now down to less than 4/10 of a second in the number 2 car. Emmanuel Palumbo is in the 3rd position in that battle. Kurt Krum in 4th, Fernando CX is in the 5th position. Stuart Adcock is currently riding in 6th. with Emmanuel Mandukes in 7th. Felicia A is in the 8th position. Simon Dejune is in 9th, and Nacho Lemorte is in the 10th position. Retirement to about so far. Marco Corti is out of the race, as is Connor Clifford, Stefan Frenzel, Raju Hermadri, and Shane Dunn is circulating very, very slowly on the racetrack. In fact, Simon Dejune there, I believe, he's been involved in an incident. He is now sat down in pit lane attempting to get some repairs to his race car, as he just lost it completely there, going in to turn number 2. And we talked about turn 2 a little bit earlier on, how it is so imperative to get the line through there. Dejune just looked as though he got himself onto the gas, and as soon as you're on there, there's absolutely no grip at all, and it's very hard to steer the car all the way around to get back onto the track. And in the case of Simon van Dejune, he ended up in the tyre barrier and is now attempting to get some repairs to his race car, and that is really going to hurt him as he was riding in the 9th position. So having a look back at that battle for the race lead momentarily, it's kind of stabilised now at that region of about 3.5 to 4 tenths of a second. Niezolowski is trying to find a way to get past Christian Horanha, but that'll be a lot easier said than done. Niezolowski in the number 2 machine, his last lap was 1 minute 33.671. If you compare that to that of Christian Horanha, 8/100ths of a second in it, and now Niezolowski is in that dirty air. He's going to be finding it very difficult to try and close to the rear of that car and then attempt to make a pass stick. It does look as though Horanha is struggling a little bit with his tyres. Since lap 1, he's been finding it difficult to get the grip in that race car. Niezolowski closing quite dramatically, actually, in turns number 8 and 9. We'll see how he is coming out of turn number 10. Always a good corner to try and get a run down the front straight away, but Niezolowski, as they come past the start-finish line, let's have a look at the gap, and it is still in that 4 tenths of a second bracket. David Barr and Nacho Lemorte, they've had themselves a little bit of an incident. Lemorte actually has lost himself a ton of time. He's dropped back to now 5 seconds behind David Farr. So that will move Farr up into the 9th position. Lemorte down into the 10th spot. And Farr has also got himself a good, let's have a look at, they come past, almost 10-second gap over Lemorte. So Farr really is now sitting in no man's land. And what that means is he's got himself a 15-second gap to the car ahead of him. But Lemorte is to say he's in fact about 8 seconds behind in the number 13 car. We'll keep an eye on that battle between Horanha and Niezolowski. In fact, we'll just go on board and Niezolowski momentarily in that number 2 car. So coming down the back straight away once again into turn number 8. You see that Niezolowski gets such a good run through this corner, but it almost looks as though he just has to get out of the throttle a little bit. In fact, he gets very close there, as Horanha took a very wide apex into the corner. As I was just about to say, Niezolowski, it does look as though he has to just get out of the throttle a little bit earlier to avoid running into the rear of Horanha, because it's so difficult to make a move happen from that bar back into turns 8, 9 and 10. But it looks as though Niezolowski's got the speed, and I wouldn't say Horanha's holding him up or anything, but it looks as though Niezolowski's starting to get a little bit frustrated in that number 2 car. And they're coming down out of turn number 2, down into Quebec corner, turn number 3. This is the part of the racetrack where Horanha has been a little bit stronger earlier on in this race, as we are now past the halfway point of the iRacing Skip Barber Racing School Premier Series race from Mosport. We've put 15 laps in the books. We're currently working lap 16. And Niezolowski looking down. Oh, that was a very brave move, and he wasn't going to make it happen. I think he's now just trying to unsettle Horanha, just ruffle his cages a little bit, because he probably knows how hard Horanha is driving in that number 1 machine, and he knows that if he can just force him into a little bit of a mistake, that'll be the easiest way for him to try and get that first position. bit further back in the battle for the 3rd, 4th and 5th position. Kurt Krum very close there. He's having to look to the outside line into turn number 8. He's got side by side. Unless he's going to brake as late as I think he's going to try and do, he's not going to be able to get the position. But this is going to be interesting as they come into the corner. Kurt Krum on the outside. They're going to be too wide for the corner. Krum having to concede the position just a little bit. But as they come back down into turn number 9, they do touch. And you see upside down there, Kurt Krum, CXS, and three of those drivers pretty much having some damage out to their race car. Kurt Krum looks like he's got himself side pod damage, but the biggest loser was Emmanuel Palumbo there. Just came to the left a little bit too much, and his car flipping upside down. He is going to be out of the race. We'll get ourselves a replay of that. Palumbo in the number 9 machine, just to the left-hand side, perhaps a little bit too much. I mean, Krum was pretty much all the way down to the curb, so there's little else that he could do, but at the same time, it looks like Krum just came up, you know, a tie width or so, but that was some close racing there. As you saw there, Krum, just as as those two came together, the car veered to the left-hand side, and then Fernando CXS, unfortunate for him, he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he tried to return his car to pit lane, but that had too much damage, and he also is out of the race. Kurt Krum, he's having more issues all the way down into turn number 5 and 6. In fact, he just completely outbraked himself. That car has absolutely no steering traction at all at the moment, and Kurt Krum has lost himself a position now to Stuart Adcock. So Adcock's up into the 3rd position. Emmanuel Mendux is up into the 4th spot, because Krum really is struggling there. And if we have a look on him in that number 4 car, it looks as though he's got a little bit of speed in 5, 8, 9 and 10, but will he try and come down pit lane to get himself some repairs to his race car? Indeed he does. So that is disastrous for Kurt Krum there, who had been having a great drive getting himself up into the battle for the 3rd position. In fact, that's bad luck for him, for CXAs, and everyone else pretty much involved in that incident. I think it was just those 3 drivers who were involved, Palumbo, CXAs and Krum. No one else was an unfortunate victim of that. But Krum down in pit lane getting repairs to his race car. He's going to lose himself a ton of time. And what that does is it moves Stuart Adcock up into 3rd. It moves Emmanuel Mendux up into 4th. It moves David Farr up into the 5th position. A little bit ahead of him, Jan Nisolowski has lost himself 2 seconds in the battle with Christian Haranha. And his last lap was only 1 minute 35.093. So we'll have a look back to see what happened to him. And it looks as though he just got himself a little bit more and a little bit sideways as he tried to turn that car into turn number 6. The car just snapped loose on him, lost all thoughts of momentum, and he's now going to have to try and charge back up to the rear of Christian Aranha. But it really does look as though he's lost himself a little bit of time, and this is Aranha's chance now to try and dance away into the sunset as we have put ourselves 18 laps in the book here at Mosport. You are watching the iRacing Skip Barber Racing School Premier Series from Mosport on Glacier TV. Aranha's gap was 2 seconds as they came across the line. So Nisolowski was in fact able to gain himself a full 0.2 of a second that last lap. If he does that for the next 10 laps, he'll have a chance in the final one. But let's not forget the dirty air comes into play. Nisolowski wasn't able to make anything happen in the first part of the race, so it's almost worth saying that Aranha still is in the catbird seat, even if Nisolowski can charge him down once again. I tell you what, the biggest gainers in that mess just a couple of laps ago really is Stuart Adcock and Emmanuel Mendux. Adcock, we talked about how he was kind of sat in no man's land even though he was trying to charge his way through the field. Well, his fastest lap of the race was a 1 minute 33.092. When you compare that to your race leaders, Jan Nisolowski's fastest lap, less than a tenth of a second faster. Christian Aranha's fastest lap is half a tenth slower. So Adcock really has been one of the fastest drivers on the racetrack here today. He had a bad qualifying position, however, starting all the way back from the 18th position after not being able to set a time in qualifying. So he has made himself a full 15 positions in this race, getting himself up into the third spot. And I beg to say, though, if this race had, if he'd started up front in this race, he really could have been a key contender in this race, not only for with Nisolowski, but Aranha as well. So we are currently working lap number 20. As I'll come past the line this next time by, there will be 10 laps to go in this race. We still have 9 drivers on the lead lap. Christian Aranha is your race leader. Jan Nisolowski in second. Stuart Adcock in third. Emmanuel Mendux in fourth. David Farr in 5th, Nacho Limonte in the 6th position, Ian Bevan in 7th, Flas Corley in 8th, Jean Rodriguez in 9th, and Kurt Crum currently sat in the 10th position in the number 4. It looks like he's going to lose himself even more time and more positions. He is circulating on the racetrack, but as he comes past the start-finish line once again, we'll have a look at his lap time, 3 minute 36. That does include, however, the time he came out a bit lame, but he really is struggling right now. And having a look back for the field, it really does look as though this has been a race of attrition. We've got a couple of drivers lapped down. Junior Massa, in fact, is one of those drivers currently circulating 3 laps down, about 4 seconds off the pace, but still keeping that car on the racetrack. He is just trying to race for positions to try and get himself a couple more championship points in this points battle. In fact, he's got himself Kurt Crum ahead of him. It is the battle of the broken cars once again. Kurt Crum doesn't know how his car's reacting at all. Junior Massa has had himself about 10 laps or so now with that damaged race car. So as I come down the back straight away, expect to see Kurt Crum perhaps just moving out of the way. He doesn't want to repeat of that incident in turn number 9 that he had with the Xers and Palumbo. But Massa is getting very close to the rear of him. This isn't a battle for position yet, but Massa really does want to just try and keep that car clean, I'm sure. So he's not going to make himself any big bold manoeuvres either. To run through your official retirements, however, we have got Marco Corti out as Stuart Adcock is out of the race. Sorry to interrupt there. Stuart Adcock, just a moment ago, after getting himself up into the 3rd position, disaster for him. He is out of the race through no fault of his own. Just completely lost technical issues to his car, and that's devastating for Adcock. And he just disappeared. Yeah, he just completely gone. And in fact, the last time you saw him, you had Shane Dunn spinning ahead of him, and as soon as that happened, boom, car gone. Shane Dunn there in the number 18 machine, he's having himself a very difficult day. He is currently scored all the way down in the 18th position, 8 laps down. That driver has been having a terrible day trying to get that car around this racetrack, and with the amount of damage he has, it's been no mean feat he being able to do so, for the simple fact that there just is absolutely no form of downforce attached to that car. He's pretty much driving a monocoque around with absolutely no downforce, and yeah, how he's doing it is actually pretty okay. Jan Nisolowski, however, he's closed that gap now down to 1.2 seconds, and his last lap was in 1 minute 33.088, and even better for Nisolowski, Christian Aranha is having to make his way through traffic. He's got himself Jean Rodriguez and Lance Corley. They are battling for the 7th position. Rodriguez is looking to the outside of Corley as they come down into turn number 8. Aranha is going to try and make it 3 wide. This isn't going to be wise, Aranha, and he does somehow make it stick there. I think both of those drivers decided to get out of the way. Corley lost the position there to Rodriguez, but he want to be known as a guy who accidentally took out the race leader? I'm sure he wouldn't have wanted to be that guy, and it allows Aranha to get himself a little bit of clean air Nisolowski, however, as they come past the line, it looks as though he was the biggest loser there. He lost himself 0.8 of a second trying to get through that mess, and it just looked as though, it looks though so that Corley had allowed Earnhardt to go past, tried to get back online, didn't realise that Nisolowski was right behind him, and Nisolowski, after entering the apex of that corner at 100 miles an hour, had to lose 20 miles an hour as he was just stuck behind for a couple of seconds, and that is pretty much cost Nisolowski any chance of attempting to mount a charge lead at the end of this race, as we are currently working at number 23 of 30 here at Mosport. And we're having a look on with Nisolowski momentarily, see how if he can close down that gap. I think now, with just 7 laps to go at the line, he might consider not pushing it too hard to bring that car home in the second position. But we know Nisolowski is a driver through and through. If he thinks he can find the time, if he thinks that he can make one more opportunity in this race, he will try his very best to do so. We've seen that Ron has been having issues with those tyres. Perhaps if he pushed Ron that hard earlier on, and now he thinks he's got a little bit left in the bag, he could try and do so. As he comes down into turn number 1, that gap is actually now up to 2.6 seconds. So it looks as though indeed Nisolowski has given up the charge. So it looks like he is happy to settle for the second position. I tell you what though, we have got ourselves a battle developing in between Emmanuel Mendux and David Farr in about for the third position. And David Farr has been able to get himself around Emmanuel Mendux away from our screens. And David Farr moves himself up into the third position. But those two drivers are having a great battle now. Mendux is lost himself about half of a second lap previous lap. Looks like his tyres really are starting to fall away from him. As you see there, David Farr has got himself Shane Dunn ahead of him. He's going very slowly in the centre of turn number 2. Be careful, guys, as they come down into turn number 3. That right-hand Quebec corner, and he gets very close there, David Farr. And he has to get completely out the throttle, then move it to the right-hand side. And then that allowed Mendux to close a little bit. He will have some momentum as they come down into Moss corner for turns number 5 and 6. But Mendux wasn't quite close enough to capitalise. It really does look as though Mendux is losing a lot of speed in the faster portion of this racetrack. With the fact these sweeping corners takes a lot out of your tyres. Mendux is a lot faster through turn number 5 and 6. But corners like turns 2, 3 and 4, really Mendux is losing out big time. A little bit further back behind him you have Duan Benzinger, who has just pulled that car to the side of the racetrack. He was also strolling around 8 laps off the pace. One of those drivers who were involved in an incident early on. He just lost the car in turn number 6, veered the car into the wall, and finally that car was bending in so many different shapes and directions, he decided that he was going to pull the car off the racetrack and call it a night. Stuart Adcock, I tell you what, he is trying his damnedest to get back into this race. He is back in the race after those issues. He is currently scored in the 9th position, and he's also scored 1 lap down. But he has got himself, let's have a look at the gap, he's got himself almost half a lap to the newest driver. So Adcock pretty much now just going to have to hot lap this car home in the number 3 machine, and that's going to be hugely disappointing for him, because he had got himself all the way up into the 3rd position, and it really did say he was going to be set for a podium finish before those issues to his race car, which forced him to have to just come down pit lane and stay there pretty much just for a couple of moments. He is now sat in the 9th position. Lance Corley ahead of him. In fact, as Adcock comes towards the start finish line, is all the way down on the exit of turn number 6, so that's not going to happen at all. Ian Bivens currently the last car on the league lap. He is in the 6th position. His last lap was a 1 minute 33.791, The closest driver to him is naturally Morte. He's full 7 seconds ahead of him, however, as we are going to quickly go back to the battle between Mandukes and David Farr. Mandukes looks as though he was a little bit closer that last time by, as they came through turn number 5 and 6, but losing it on exit, and that allows David Farr to just get a great run down this long back straightaway. If you can get on the power, you know, even if it's a car length before the driver ahead of you, you will keep that momentum all the way down the back straightaway, regardless of the draft, just because of the way the concertina effect happens on the way out of the corner. And Mandukes really does look as though he is going to have to settle for the 4th position after a determined drive in that number 10 machine. David Farr, however, he started this race David Farr, he started this race in the 8th position, moved up to 3rd. Mandukes started this race in the 10th position, moved up to 4th. So they're always having a battle for hard charger award at the moment, ever since Stuart Adcock was forced to give up that award. Christian Reinhardt is still your race leader. The gap between himself now and Jan Nisolowski is up to 2.965 seconds. Nisolowski can just see the rear ring in the distance of Christian Reinhardt. Not quite close enough though, and I'm sure Reinhardt is just going to coast that car home to the line now. This is coming down through turn number 8, and then he'll flick it to the left hand side into 9, then to the right hand side into turn number 10. He'll have 4 laps to go as they come past the start finish line here in the iRacing Skip Barber Racing School Premier Series presented by Glacier TV. 4 laps to go here at Mosport, and Arana, this really is now his race to lose. And when we talk about the Skip Barber, the iRacing Skip Barber Racing School Premier Series, we always talk about drivers like Christian Reinhardt. We're in round number 9 or 12 at the moment, and for drivers like Reinhardt, it really is closing off the deal. I mean, Reinhardt is a full 170 points ahead of his nearest rival Marco Corti coming into this race. And we talked about how Corti was involved in the incident on lap number 1, which forced him to be classified as the 24th and last driver. Now, what will happen is Reinhardt will increase that lead in the championship, coming down in to the last 3 rounds of the race. Will be at Mid-Ohio in a couple of weeks' time. Then we'll be going to Virginia International Raceway and then concluding the series at Alton Park. But for Reinhardt, this really is now a time to just to say close the deal, because when you consider the average points per race for him, he is pretty much riding on about 150 points a race, and that means that he's almost got himself a 4 race buffer coming into the last 3 rounds of this championship, and that really is going to be interesting for him. Jan Nisolowski still sat in the 2nd position as they come across the line. 3 laps to go. Nisolowski's season has been a little bit topsy-turvy. He's had some great finishes. In fact, he's sat in the 3rd position in the championship battle just coming into this race. In fact, he was only about 15... I take that back. He was only 5 points behind Marco Corti, but Corti had a race in hand. We talked about how Corti, however, probably won't score any more than about 5 points in this race, and it just won't be worth him really taking that into consideration, because Corti's pretty much lost the entire chance to gain any form of points in this race, and that really is going to hurt him. So Jan Nisolowski still sat in that 2nd position. David Farr is a full 40 seconds behind Nisolowski in the 3rd spot. That really does show the dominance of Reinhardt and Nisolowski in this race. Coming down for the 1st lap, it really did look as though that coming into this race, Bevan was going to be able to drive to match Christian Reinhardt, as he's less than a tenth of a second as they came to the green flag, but he spun that car on lap number 1, causing that I wouldn't say causing that pile-up here, which was the catalyst for what became a 3-car incident. And that is a shame to see Bevan, who has now moved himself back up into the 6th position, having to settle for that spot, because it really could have challenged Reinhardt and Nisolowski for a spot on the podium. In fact, Bevan's lap times, it looks like they've fallen off just a little bit, but in fact he set his fastest lap of the race on lap number 26 of 1 minute 33.305. But Bevan, Nisolowski, and Ranha really have been the drivers of the race, alongside with perhaps Stuart Adcock, who has set himself the second fastest lap of the race with that 1 minute 33.0 all the way back on lap number 10. So 2 laps left to go now for Christian Ranha, still in that first position, leading every lap here today as he comes underneath the Continental Bridge into Clayton Corner, turn number 2, then to the right once again into turn number 3. Pretty much now got himself a lap and a half left to go. Here's your race leader. Jan Nisolowski is in second, David Farr is in third, Emmanuel Mendukes is in fourth, Nacho Limonte is in the 5th position, with Ian Bevan in 6th, and Jean Rodriguez in 7th, Lance Corley in 8th, Stuart Adcock in 9th, and Kurt Crum rounding out your top 10. If you want to know what happened to Marco Corti, he was involved in an incident down in turns number 5 and 6 on lap number 1, getting himself some substantial damage to that car. Which put him out of the race, and he will be scored in 24th and last. Meanwhile, Christian Aranha is going to come down now to take the white flag. In fact, he's already down through turn number 1. He's coming down into turn number 2 already. So he really has only got himself 3/4 of a lap left to go. With the most difficult corner on the racetrack, that is now complete. Bring it down into turn number 3. And Nisolowski is a full 2.5 seconds behind. Unless Aranha makes the biggest of mistakes, he really isn't going to be able to challenge Ranha as they are now down onto that long back straightaway for the final time. Slow traffic ahead of him. That was Gino Massa going down another lap. With Massa, I think that will just be glad that his race is over, as Kurt Crum is slow as well on the racetrack. I think these drivers are just trying to let Ranha go past, so they don't have to do another lap of hell driving those damaged race cars. Christian Ranha coming down into turn number 8, flick it to the left into 9 one more time as he does so. Beautiful precision driving by Christian Ranha, out into the final corner, out of the final corner, and Christian Ranha wins round number 9 of the Skip Barber Racing School Premier Series, and a great job by him. Nisolowski comes home in the 2nd position. We've got ourselves a little bit of a wait now. David Farr in the 3rd position, all the way down on the back straightaway. The Mario Andretti straightaway as they come down into turn number 8. He is in no man's land. He's got himself still a full 7-second gap to Emmanuel Mendukes behind him as he comes down into turns number 8, 9 and 10. He will be classified with a 3rd place finish. A tremendous drive for him, making the most of all of those opportunities, and he will be classified as that 3rd place finish, and he will be a very happy man. He does himself a little podium wiggle, we'll call it. And now we're waiting for Emmanuel Dukes to come home in the 4th position, as indeed he does so. Ian Bevan will come home in 5th. Nacho Limonte in the 6th spot. Lance Corley is currently coming through. In fact, he's already, by the look of it, he has already got his race done. Or is he? No, he's not. He is coming down into those final couple of corners now. In fact, he's just working his way on his final lap. So half a lap left to go for Corley, as he's just slowing that car down. All these drivers now pretty much have completed their race. We'll just give it a moment and we'll run through your final race results. So then, to run through your final race results here at Mosport, International Raceway, for those of you who want to be pedantic, also known as the Canadian Tires Motorsports Park. Your race winner, Christian Aranha, completing the 30 laps in 46 minutes, 44 seconds, .569. Jan Nisolowski will come home in the second position with a gap between himself and Aranha, 2.1 seconds as they came across the line. David Farr comes home in the third position. Emmanuel Mendukes in fourth. Ian Bevan in fifth, Nacho Lamorte in the sixth position, Lawrence Corley in seventh, Stuart Adcock in eighth, John Rodriguez in ninth, Kurt Crum in 10th, Sean Woodhouse in 11th, Junior Massett in 12th, Shane Dunn in 13th, Brian Benzinger in 14th, Fernando Sexias in the 15th position, Vasily A in 16th, Emmanuel Palumbo in 17th, Richard Wedstead in 18th, Simon DeJune in 19th, Maurizio McShoney in 20th. And then you rest your retirees, Rodo Hamaradri in 21st, Stephanie Frenzel in 22nd, Connor Clifford 23rd, and Marco Corti in the 24th and final position. So, just before we say goodbye, we have got ourselves just enough time to run through what is coming up for the rest of you this week on Glacier TV. Coming up on Saturday, coming up tomorrow, we have ourselves the Trellet.net late model race from Brands Hatch, 56 laps of Brands Hatch Indy. Then on Saturday, the Talk Freak Racing Summer Super Cup will be coming to you from Silverstone with the Corvette and the 4GTs. On Sunday, we have got ourselves the Grand Am Premier Series, which will be coming to you from Indianapolis Motor Speedway's bike course. No Afterburn IndyCar Series this weekend, unfortunately. And then next Tuesday, we'll have ourselves the Talk Freak Racing Touring Car Championship from Phillip Island and the BigDogsRacing.com Late Model Series, the Firecracker 150 from Bristol. So it's time for me to say now, good night, and we'll see you all later this week.